I'm so glad to be at home at Local 22, where I joined the UAW. It's good to be home. I was born and raised in Flint. I've spent some years here working as an auto worker, then I went on to Flint and became an auto worker. And I feel lucky to have been in the UAW, because the UAW taught us how to fight corporate power. And that's what we fighting in Flint with the water. We fighting corporate power is what we fighting. I'm not gonna take long, I'm gonna just give y'all the update on Flint. Flint is still broken. I got a t-shirt. Flint is still broken. We just lost a woman this year, Lori Carter, 57 years old, from Legionella. Mary Watson, 43 years old, had a bright future ahead of her. And the youngest one yet that we know of from Legionella, Jasmine McBride. So, brothers and sisters, we're still dying up there in Flint. We are still sick in Flint. If we were to turn our faucets on today and have the purest water you could find anywhere, we're still living with the health impacts of what happened to us in this Flint disaster. Now I'm gonna start out by saying this, and again, I'm just gonna be short and sweet. When Sun Tzu said, "Know thy enemy, know thyself," that means who is our enemy and who is our friends. And y'all remember 50 years ago when Goodman, Snyder, and Cheney got killed, civil rights workers. And Martin Luther King said, the question is not who killed them, the question is what killed them. And ever since the Flint water crisis began, the people in the city of Flint, and we are UAW stronghold down there too. So we didn't just jump off the truck. We've been through some things too. And we got a lot of training from the union. But I can show you pictures of Governor Snyder, Nick Lyon, head of DHS, all these people that would be the who's of the situation. The emergency manager, our former mayor, we could put them up here on the wall, put their pictures up there, and say that's who poisoned Flint. But that doesn't get to the heart of the matter.
Hold it down.
And I'm gonna be quick, but I want to show you a picture, and I use this all the time when I go and speak at places. And this is a picture of magazine cover from Privatization magazine. There is a magazine called Privatization, believe it or not. It's produced right here out of Michigan. And this particular issue is from 2001. 2001. Privatization magazine did an article about how to privatize Detroit. How to privatize Detroit in 2001. Here's some of the names of the articles. The Conventions of Privatization, talking about Cobo Hall, for whom the private bail tolls. Who is that? Y'all know who the private bail tolls is? Bill Al. That's who they was talking about in 2001. Water privatization can help Detroit avoid drowning in debt. See, it's people in high places, and we call them capitalists, because he who owns capital rules in this system. And one other one, privatization should drive Detroit transportation. They privatized all the service trucks and whatnot. But I'm saying this to say is that in order us to win this battle, we're gonna have to understand what we're dealing with here. What we're dealing with, not just who, but what we're dealing with. And our major problems began when the emergency manager law was passed. That was like opening up a big room full of arsenal and weapons. And they say, oh, let's use this. Emergency manager, Public Act 4. Send an individual into your city, into your school districts, and your municipality, and set aside your local elected official. Public Act 4, Governor Snyder sent individuals around this state, primarily in African American majority cities, poor, large double-digit % of poverty, and last but not least, lots of assets. When you had them three things, you was the low-hanging fruit. They was gonna come take over your city. And you can name every city that's been took over, and you'll find those characteristics there. So fast forward to Flint. Emergency manager sent to Flint. Bondholders, hedge fund interests wanted to take over the water and build a new pipeline called the KWA. I'm just reducing this to the simple term. Well, the emergency manager made the switch, and that's why we got poisoned, because they was in a hurry to save money and build a new pipeline. And I'm gonna tell you something, and I'm gonna tell you some bad news, and I'm gonna tell you some good news. And the bad news is this: we are still suffering as a result of the Flint water disaster. We don't call it a crisis. We have asked for, we're kind of growing up in Flint now. We're beginning to see where the power structures lie. We got a new governor, but we got the same old system. All right? Y'all didn't hear what I said. I said we got a new governor, but we got the same old system. And we have put forth some demands to try to make the Flint water crisis a down payment on our recovery, and we have not been, unfortunately, able to obtain some of those. And I'll just name a couple of them. And one, and it's so near and dear to my heart, that this Local 22, my old local, is taking leadership in health care, because we desperately need health care in Flint. In the Affordable Care Act, a small town in Montana, Libby, Montana, somebody had the foresight to look after Libby, Montana, because they had been exposed and worked in a vermiculite plant, and the whole area and everybody that worked there was poisoned, cancer-causing chemicals. When the men would come home from work and they had all that dust from the mine, they gave it to their wives and children and everything. And someone had the foresight to put a provision in the Affordable Care Act that said all residents impacted by the poisoning in Libby, Montana will get, guess what they got? Medicare for all, as part of a health emergency. They got Medicare for all regardless of age, and they got supplemental things. to go with it that Medicare don't normally pay for because it was a health emergency. We are in that emergency. And we have been demanding, you did it for Libby, Montana, do it for us. Let us be the model for the nation. We done made history in Flint with the great sit-down strike. Let's make history and get some health care for all in the city of Flint. So we're working on that. And we're working on abolishing the emergency manager law. We need to disarm our governor from being able to dispatch an individual to set up a dictatorship in this state. It's dictatorship. We could not go to our city leaders and say, we don't want to go on the Flint River. Democracy was gone. So they stole our democracy, and then they're stealing. We're going to fix that too. They're stealing our water. So I just wanted to share an update. We still sick. Our third grade babies last year, only 10% passed the state test, y'all. We got all kind of behavior problems with our young people, and we don't, and all this $300-something million, they said, well, they already spent $300-something million on Flint, but they didn't spend it on us. What can we do? We'll let you know what one of the things we're gonna do, we're gonna go to Rashida Tlaib's environmental hearing that she announced earlier today. That's one thing we can do. And let's show up. Let's show up. The brother back there said, let's show up. Use us. Let's show up at these things. So I'll take questions. Sorry that was short and everything. Yes.
Got $20 million plus, and some unnamed group, corporations or businesses, got the amount of $163 million plus. This is money that was supposed to be going to Flint for repair.
Yes.
And restoration. And is it true, my understanding, these entities, did they have anything to do with restoring?
They had absolutely nothing to do with the water. They just used the excuse that they were in Flint and they got some money. But I just want to remind you about what Naomi Klein said in her book, Disaster Capitalism. The corporate powers in this country are not going to let a disaster go by without exploiting it. And we, as unionists, we know how the companies do and exploit situations. And that's what's happening here. And we are doing some investigation on a lot of that. Any more questions? Thank you. Love you so much.